2 weeks ago in Philly, it seemed that Bill Clinton had what we black folks call a nigger moment.
I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children. Maybe you thought they were good citizens. She didn't. She didn't. You are defending the people who kill the lives you say matter. Tell the truth.
And since so many neo-colonized-minded black people love Bill and want to claim him to be an honorary black man, the protesters who came to shut his speech down last week delivered his nigger moment in spades. But you know what? Scratch that. Bill didn't get a nigger moment. He experienced that overthrown plantation master moment. Well, what? With the legislation that the U.S. Congress passed in 1994 called the Omnibus Crime Bill, spearheaded by Joe Biden and Bill Clinton, that had a price tag of $30 billion and helped to accelerate the growth of the prison industrial complex, he's lucky he didn't get a shave with a machete that week. Let's talk about that bill. It gave us the 3 strikes proposal that mandated life sentences for anyone convicted of 3 violent felonies. Yet studies have concluded, like the Brennan Center for Justice's study titled "What Caused the Crime Decline," they look at the Omnibus Clinton crime bill and show that statistically, while the incarceration rates were high, it had no real effect on crime. You can find the study itself in the low bar. You can draw a conclusion that while you warehouse mainly nonviolent criminals, and by the way, even Bill Clinton last year admitted to jailing quote-unquote minor players in the drug game, the true makers of criminals is poverty, and warehousing people does not reverse crime nor rid a community of it. Now I want to read this passage found in the study on page 48. Overuse of incarceration leads to ineffectiveness. Much of the increase in incarceration was driven by the imprisonment of nonviolent and drug offenders. Today, half of state prisoners are serving time for nonviolent crimes. Almost half of federal prisoners are serving time for drug crimes. Further, 2/3 of jail inmates are merely awaiting trial. Political scientist Jose Canela-Cocho argues that incarceration's incapacitation effect decreases when incarceration is increasingly used for less serious offenders. This means incarcerating the 2 millionth person likely results in much less crime reduction than locking up the first. Why? As noted above, when prisons are used sparingly, incarceration is reserved for the highest risk and most serious offenders. Today, the U.S., where the incarceration rate is at a historic high, experiences smaller additional, in other words marginal, crime reduction gains from further increases in incarceration, as the individuals incarcerated on average tend to have committed less serious crimes. Unquote. Also from that old crime bill, $10 billion in federal matching funds to local governments to hire 100,000 new police officers over 5 years. Of course, that increased over time, well into the George W. era. But let's not put that $10.8 billion to job training programs or improve inner city schools and the educational system serving working class communities. Giving teachers raises, expanding classroom space, the things that actually help to keep people from becoming criminals anyway. And Clinton's bill yielded an expansion of the number of federal crimes. to which the death penalty applied from 2 to 58. The bill also eliminated an existing statute that prohibited the execution of mentally incapacitated defendants. And then there is the $10 billion for the construction of new federal prisons, which I'm sure was the root for the expansion of the prison industrial complex and for-profit prison industry well after the Clinton administration to present day. One could also see the connection between this bill and how the issue of school-to-prison pipeline began when you look at the section of the bill that allowed children as young as 13 to be tried as adults. And again, I'm going to repeat, lack of funding for schools, lack of funding to improve inner city schools is also a huge factor in the school-to-prison pipeline. Now, I do have to stop here and say that the liberals who are critics of Clinton attribute mass incarceration to just him and his crime bill. That is not completely true. He was an added factor. The Reagan administration's war on drugs, which was the beginning of the militarizing of the police force, among other things, and the fact that mass incarceration saw a steady increase since 1973, should tell us that no matter what, politicians, the true servants of the ruling class, only function as cleanup managers for capitalism's mess. It means it cannot only provide work for the working class, it has zero interest in doing so. The working class, as the years have gone on, are seen as obsolete to capitalists as they move plants and factories, in other words, the means of production for profit, to other parts of the world, where they will exploit wage slaves for labor, further optimizing their profits. Doing so means you have a poor population in surplus, no longer needed for exploitation. So you let the poverty they fall into, making them criminals, and in turn, you have prisons turning a profit, waiting with open mouths. It's a problem that fixes itself for the rulers when you think about it. Surplus worker turned criminals, warehoused to make profit, and you take the swell out of a potential fighting class to boot. I bring the Clinton bill up, and better, his reaction to black folks' protest to Hillary's candidacy in connection to that bill to show the duality of the contentious and exploitative relationship between Democrats and the marginalized groups in America. It has always been a myth that the Democrats and most liberals who bow down and vote for the so-called centrists of the party have been friends to black people, Latinos, women, and LGBT. They have always pandered to us in the worst way when they look to get elected, only to then bare their fangs, as Bill has done in Philly, after they've gotten what they want. When this happens, they show their true faces as to what Democrat politicians truly are: the slave masters' field whips, the shop floor foremen who rig the machines to hurt workers in order to thin the payroll. That's who they truly are. Now, some of you support Sanders, but if he loses the primary and Hillary Clinton is the contender for the Oval Office, what will you do? I can tell you now, I won't be voting for her nor Trump, because there won't be a difference between them. A fist in a velvet glove is still a fist punching you in the face.